Street Stories NYC. Street Stories NYC. Hey, it's Michael Knight here, the New York Cowboy, bringing you another story from the Street Stories NYC series. Today, our story is taken from the book The Church, and our title is called Sister Margaret. Sister Margaret took her walk with God very seriously. Her husband Andre wasn't quite as serious. He didn't believe that you had to take the Bible 100% seriously. He constantly claimed that some things were for people back in those times and not for modern people. Andre loved his wife Margaret, and he was faithful through their entire 22 years of marriage. He didn't like for anyone to ever insinuate that he didn't wear the pants in the family, though. Any decisions that had to be made in his household had to be approved by him for them to be carried out. Margaret was a firm believer in submitting to her husband's authority without question, especially out in public. She would never embarrass her husband in front of other people. She would make sure to get her point across back at home, though, and Andre wouldn't be getting any sleep or anything else until he acknowledged that he understood what her point of view was. Margaret made sure to be in church 2 nights out of the week, and she would never miss a Sunday. She didn't try to get on the choir or to be an usherette or anything like that. She was content to sit out in the pews and listen and worship in quiet. Most Sundays Andre would come. Some Sundays there would be a ball game on that he just couldn't miss, and he wouldn't go, so Margaret paid for DVR service so that he could record whatever he wanted. She would also make him a little jealous and talk about some of the other brothers in the church so that he would come. She would say that some brothers would see her sitting all alone and come and sit by her, and when the preacher told everyone to hold hands, that they would be squeezing her hand. Andre was very jealous and very protective. He always told Margaret that some of the men in church were just there looking for women, but Margaret figured whatever worked to get him to come was great. Andre would be very fidgety all during the service, but Margaret would hold his hand or whisper something sweet in his ear to keep him comfortable. Margaret had a beautiful voice, and she would stand and sing when the choir sang. Andre loved the sound of her voice, and he would sit and tap his foot during some of the upbeat songs. The service rarely ever ran long, and Margaret and Andre would greet the different members as everyone exited the church. Right after church, Andre would get in the car and complain about everything. The preacher preached too long. The choir sang the same song too long. The preacher made everybody stand up and sit down 10 times. And the offering plate came around too many times. If there was something to complain about, Andre complained about it. Margaret had one real problem with Andre. Andre liked to play numbers and all of the current games that picked various numbers to win. Andre went as far as saying that he would even dream numbers sometimes, and he believed that God let him dream those numbers so that he could win. Andre won several times over the years, but he never really won anything substantial, and even when he won, he would just be getting his money back that he had spent. Margaret told him that God had nothing to do with what he called his gambling habits. No matter what Margaret said, Andre was convinced that one day soon God was going to answer his prayers and let him win really big. When he prayed, he would tell God that he would share the money with the church, and he would try to help people if he won. He knew that paying his tithes was the right thing to do, and he swore that he wouldn't try to short God. Margaret wasn't the kind of woman that would nag, but she knew how to be persistent when she had something that she really believed in, and she would try her best to reason out every situation until an understanding was reached. She believed the saying in the Bible, "With all thy getting, get understanding." Margaret knew that even if some people could see God right in front of them, that they would question if they really saw him an hour later. Andre was that person. Margaret tried to use the Word of God in a submissive way to make sure that her husband made the right decisions that affected their lives together. She gave him the authority to finalize any decisions that were made, especially if other people were present, but she made sure that she had a big influence in that final decision behind closed doors. Andre had a lot of pride, and she loved him enough that she would never step out of bounds or belittle him. Andre loved her as well, and he didn't try to pull any macho behavior in front of his friends or strangers, though many nights the couple had some heated arguments. They both believed in the saying that you shouldn't go to bed angry, so when they finished any discussions, one of them would say, "Okay, whose turn is it?" And then whosever turn it was would say, "Okay, you win," and they would kiss and go to bed. It worked for both of them, and most mornings neither one of them ever remembered that they were angry the night before. Margaret was unable to have children, so the couple depended upon each other for everything. They both had siblings that had children, and they ended up babysitting many nights and weekends. They enjoyed that experience, and they enjoyed the fact that the kids would go home and they could spend the time alone until the next time that they were asked to babysit. Andre got home later than usual one afternoon, and Margaret thought that he was acting funny. "What's going on, Dre?" she asked. "Nothing. What do you mean?" answered Andre. "You know what I mean. You know that I know you too well, so tell me what's going on," insisted Margaret. "Come outside," said Andre. Margaret followed along, and when she got to the door, her jaw dropped. There in the driveway was a brand new Mercedes-Benz. "I told you that God lets me dream the numbers. I won $150,000, shouted Andre. Margaret was so excited, and they both jumped in the car and they went for a ride. After the ambulance left, Margaret, she said suddenly, "Did you give God his due?" Andre stopped, and he remembered his promise that he had made, but he forgot, and when he got the money, the first thing he did was run out and buy a car. "I'll take care of it tomorrow at service," Andre said quietly. The next day, Andre and Margaret got to church, and when it was time to take the offering, Margaret watched as Andre wrote a check and placed it in the plate. "Are you kidding me? Are you going to rob God?" asked Margaret, because the check was not the full amount that Andre was supposed to give. Andre ignored her, and when the treasurer saw the check, she got up and announced that Brother Andre had given generously to the church. Then Andre had the nerve to get up and say how he had to give God his portion so that he could be blessed. Margaret got up and marched out angrily into the front of the church outside. In a few minutes, Andre came out to see where she was. The wind had started to blow fiercely, and it began to storm. The couple stood under the awning in front of the church as the storm grew in ferocity. "Do you remember the story of Ananias and Sapphira? They tried to rob God, and he destroyed them. Do you want to take that chance for that free money that you got?" asked Margaret. "Don't be ridiculous," Andre started to answer when a bright lightning strike flashed, almost blinding them. It hit a tree right on the corner, and a large limb came crashing down right on top of Andre's brand new Mercedes. The couple looked at each other for a moment, and suddenly Andre did an about-face and went inside and walked straight up to the altar. He took out his checkbook and wrote out the balance of the 10% of his winnings and a large offering. He kneeled at the altar and silently said, "Forgive me, Lord." No one in church knew what had happened, but Margaret felt a warm feeling inside, and she thought to herself that she was a good Christian wife. She was thankful that God had taught her husband a powerful lesson and that he was merciful to the two of them. She was glad when she remembered the phrase, "Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may be without the word, be won by the conversation of the wives." Margaret knew her humility and faithfulness were not in vain, and surely her husband would appreciate her gentle nagging even more from now on, and she laughed to herself. Hey, well, I hope you enjoyed our story today, and I hope you go on and check out some of the books. Go to the website, thenewyorkcowboy.com, or Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com. You can get the books. If you go to the website, you can get the t-shirts, the books. You can listen to some of the music. You can download it, check out the videos. But check it out. This is Michael Knight, the New York Cowboy, saying thanks again till our next episode of Street Stories NYC.